Hi, it's Christina Myers, host of The Stina Life. In this episode, we're going to dive into the energetic condition of soul fragmentation. This might not be the most talked about energetic challenge, but it is a quite common occurrence as a result of trauma. In addition, I'm going to touch upon the energetic shifts we can expect as we wrap up the month of January, including the move of Pluto into Aquarius for the next 20 plus years. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. We are in a deep freeze in North America right now, and I have been in my hibernation phase, navigating through all the weather changes. In fact, it's been so cold here that I've been spending a lot of time bundled up under the covers with my heater on full blast. It really has been a nice change of pace, except for my kitchen sink freezing up, which has not been very nice. But it's been great because I've just been able to just be and unwind. And there's not been a ton of motivation to do much of anything, including recording this podcast. But it's been a nice change of pace to just remind myself how very important it is to give ourselves time and space and the deep rest and reset that we really need. And that's the whole purpose why we go into these winter months and have this hibernation period. In fact, my guides came to me the other day and asked me just to sit still for a little bit and to feel what it's like to be in the void, the 0 point. And it's within this void, within this 0 point, that we can create from nothing. But first, we have to be very, very comfortable with being there. And in our 24/7 culture, being completely still, being in the nothingness can feel very foreign and uncomfortable to most of us. But that is definitely what we are collectively and individually being asked to do right now. We are going through this massive death and rebirth cycle, individually and collectively, as I have been talking about for most of 2023. We have been in this cleaning house mode, this purging of relationships, of jobs, of thought patterns, of belief systems, of conditioning. You name it. We have become more whole in our truth and within our sovereignty. And this week, we are going through another massive energetic shift that is helping to support this transition. And this is taking place on January 19th, the day I'm recording this podcast, and on January 20th. So today, January 19th, we have the Sun and Pluto conjunct. They are together at the same degree, the mastery degree of 29 degrees in the sign of Capricorn. This is the last final degree in which Pluto and the Sun are coming together to be in this particular sign. We are shining a light with the Sun on all the things that we have unearthed within Pluto over these past really almost 20 years, not quite 20 years, but pretty close to 20 years, 16 years. And essentially what we're doing is we're creating a new blueprint for where we are going to focus for the next 20 years. Pluto in Capricorn began in 2007, 2008, around that time frame. And the focus of Pluto and Capricorn has been around these major Capricornian themes: money, the government, structures, father energy, our systems that are in place. And what we've been doing with Pluto here is we have been unearthing what has been keeping us really in a state of confinement in many ways. Capricorn, if you think about it, it's very much like a big mountain range. It is immovable. It is full of lessons. It is forcing us to climb up it as we collect experiences and we learn from the great teacher and the taskmaster, which is Capricorn. This is very dense energy. It's very much third dimensional energy. It's literally physical structures is what Capricorn represents. And so we have been doing this slow unearthing process of looking under the surface of all of these structures, of all of our thought patterns, of where are the places that we personally have been feeling constricted, feeling like we have to just follow the same path as everybody else. And so that is really the themes that we've been looking at. And as we've reached this mastery degree, we are now reflecting upon all the work that we have done collectively and individually as we have begun to break down the structures and start to free ourselves from them. So on January 20th, the Sun and Pluto are going to change signs and be conjunct in Aquarius at 0 degrees. So we are literally moving from earth to air, and not just any air. We are moving into an air sign that is like a torrential windstorm. Aquarius comes in fast, it comes in furious, and it's going to rattle and shake anything that is not serving the greater good, that is not in alignment with our personal sovereignty. And Aquarius is such an interesting sign. It has such an interesting energy because it really does not give two F's about what people think. It is here to be unique. It is here to be weird. It is here to shake things up. It is here to tear things down. And it's here to bring to light the things that are not working, the things that are being done that are not helping the whole, that are not here serving in the community. In one way, on the personal level, Aquarius is very much me. It can be very cold and impersonal, but on the collective level, it's really about bringing unity consciousness to the forefront. It's about that peace, love, and harmony. So it has this very dualistic side to it, but it's truly about how do we really come together to help each other and help the greater good advance in a way that works for everybody. We are all going to feel this shift collectively, mostly because it's such a big change of the elements, which could not be, so different from each other. With Pluto, though, it's going to be more subtle because Pluto moves so slowly. It takes so long to travel through a sign, and it's going to just very slowly start to excavate the things that need to come up from the depths and to be exposed and brought to the light. And it takes a long time. Again, we're going to have this energy for the next 20 years. And so it will be a slower process. But within Aquarius, because Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, we could see some real shakeups come to the surface that were less, they're going to be much more apparent than they were in Capricorn. Let's just say that. For you personally, on the individual level, you want to take a look at your natal chart, your birth chart, and you want to see which house Aquarius is sitting in. And this is going to give you some clues as to the overall themes of what you're going to be focusing on with this energy over the next 20 years. Where is this energy going to help you unearth things? Where is it going to give you strength, resiliency, fortitude to be able to move through different situations? So I'm going to run down really quick the 12 houses and the overall themes of what you could be working on as it relates to where Aquarius is sitting in your natal chart. So in the first house, this is all about the self, I am. So this is going to be about your identity It's going to be about your outlook on life, your approach to life. It will be about your physical body as well. So you're really inwardly focused, unearthing and looking at yourself. In the second house, this is all about what you have, your possessions. It's also going to be a focus on your personal value system. How are you stepping in to create your own self-worth? And how are you going to be making money to help you within your career? It also can be about your habits. If you have Aquarius in your third house, this is going to be all around your mind and your communications, how you think and how you communicate. So you're going to be doing a lot of examination about your thought patterns, about how you communicate with other people. In the fourth house, this is about how you feel. So this is very much going to be about your emotions. It's going to be about self-care. It's going to be about who you are in your very private place, your home life. Maybe it can be related to your relationship with your family of origin, because the fourth house does represent that too, or your current family that you have now. In your fifth house, this is where you express yourself. So this will be around your own self-expression. It will be around creativity. It will be around potentially children, your relationship with children, having children, romance as well. In the sixth house, this is where we serve. So this is going to focus on how we are of service to the collective. This also focuses on our day-to-day routines, our health, our fitness, our body function. In the seventh house, it's about relationships. It is about contracts. It is about going deeper into our relationships with other people. How do we relate to others? How are we within a partnership? So these sorts of relationship pieces will be coming up, which I would expect if you have Pluto transiting your seventh house. You are going to be really doing a lot of reevaluation of those relationships. So expect some of those things to really change at a deep level. The eighth house is about how you circulate. So it is about a deepening of those relationships, intimacy, joint ventures, assets, inheritances. It's where Pluto normally sits. And so it's going to dig deep within the eighth house. Your ninth house is all about travel, spirituality, higher education, your ethics, your higher thought forms. It's where you explore and navigate in life. And so there'll be a deepening of these particular topics. In the 10th house, this is your most public spot. Generally, this is the career house. So it's where you achieve things. It's going to be about your public reputation. It's going to be about your purpose. What are you here to do? How are you here to serve? And how is that translated on the big stage? Because that's what everybody sees. In the 11th house, it's around groups and friends and humanitarianism and technology. This is where Aquarius normally sits, is in the 11th house. And so this is where it's going to be very comfortable being able to form those types of associations, groups, and friends that are focused about a shared transition, change, cause. So you'll see a lot more activity around that. And then in the 12th house, this is all about the unconscious. It is all about your psyche, what's hidden, what is karmic, what has happened in past lifetimes. So this is going to be a lot of very deep introspection work, a lot of deep karmic and unconscious work that you will be doing within the 12th house. So one thing to keep in mind is that there will be one more shift of Pluto retrograding back into Capricorn beginning September 1st, and then it will fully be in Aquarius beginning November 19th. So as this has just a tiny little piece of shifting back into Capricorn, I would expect that we'll see some disruption within the themes of Capricorn. Specifically, this will fall during the height of the election cycle in the United States, which should be very interesting to see this come back. And we have a whole bunch of retrogrades going on at the same time, beginning in April. So 2024, this whole thing within our government structures and the election cycle is going to be a very interesting thing to watch. As a reminder, Pluto has not been in Aquarius for 240 years. So the last time it was in Aquarius was between 1778 and 1798. And at this time, we had things like the French Revolution. We had the Constitution of the United States being adopted. We had the Industrial Revolution. Aquarius rules technology, and it also rules galactic connections. So within this time period, we are sure to see rapid technology advancements, so many more innovations for sure. And I think we're going to see a lot more contact within our galactic connections. Many of you are already feeling that. You are already experiencing that. You're already having massive connections with galactics. But I expect that that's going to be even further enhanced. And with Uranus being the ruling planet of Aquarius, we need to be very mindful that while Pluto goes very slowly and it unearths it, Aquarius's energy is very unexpected and it brings in things quickly and sudden changes are to be expected. So I would not rule out having quite a shakeup as Pluto is moving through Aquarius, just because Aquarius's energy just wants to break things down and shake things up. Two other components to look at for the rest of January. On January 25th, we will have our full moon in Leo. Leo is very much about self-sovereignty. It is very much about stepping into our own power, about shining our light in the world. It is about our creativity. It's about how we express ourselves. It's about taking a leadership role. And so as we're shifting here, as the sun is shifting, as Pluto is shifting, and as Leo is coming out for this full moon, we are definitely going to be releasing anything that is holding us back from fully stepping in to our self-sovereignty. So expect a big shift of consciousness happening on that day. And then on January 26th, we have Uranus going direct after being in retrograde since late August. So again, Uranus rules Aquarius. So we will be able to really fully move forward. And again, we're going to see a lot more things shaking up because we're in Aquarian season. We're in the Aquarius season. The good news, though, is with Uranus going direct, we will be officially out of all retrogrades for a little bit. I think we go back in around early part of April, which will give us this forward momentum on all fronts. And again, with this Aquarian energy, we're bringing in this wind, air energy. We're definitely going to be off to the races with things moving very, very fast. And as we are each navigating through our own journeys, and as we are leveraging these energies like Pluto, it is helping us, as we're on our own personal journey, dig under the surface and into the unconscious. And I wanted to talk about an energetic challenge that I have personally experienced, as well as seen in many other people. And it's not something that's talked about very often. You don't hear about this a lot. But in today's day and in time that we're living in, for many of us, we're here to do very deep karmic cleanups in this lifetime. And it's very common that we have things that come to the surface that need to be addressed. And one of those energetic components that I have personally experienced and also seen in others is soul fragmentation. So, what is soul fragmentation? Well, we each have a soul. It's what allows us to travel between time and space. And it is our soul that holds the memories and experiences from all of our incarnations. You have a constant recorder going at all times, and it's recording every single thing that you do, every single thought, every single emotion, every single interaction, all of that's being recorded. And if you think about a wheel on a bicycle, there is that circular component that actually attaches to the frame of the bicycle. And think of that as being your soul. And think of that as being also the recorder that records all of your thoughts, experiences, all your interactions from all your lifetimes. And then if you look at all the spokes that come off of that create the wheel, think of those individual spokes as your individual lifetimes. So each of those lifetimes that you have been incarnated, it is recording all of those experiences. And then again, it comes back to that center point, that soul record, or what we call the Akashic records, holds all of those experiences right there and records them. All of those experiences and interactions can follow you from any of your incarnations. You can have an incarnation at one point and it can follow you to another one. And those interactions and those thoughts and experiences sit in what's called the morphogenetic energy field, which is a layer of your auric field. And those things can come into your body and activate at any time, which means you could have a lifetime that you lived in, say, 1598, and you had an experience where you had a spouse betray you, and you carry that betrayal with you at the soul level. And that particular memory can activate in this lifetime from a similar experience happening. And what it does is it creates a situation where we are working with an experience that then has to be identified and then needs to be healed in the current time and space. So if you think about every experience, every memory, every thought, every interaction as a tiny particle of dust, and think about all those little tiny particles floating around you. Each of those tiny pieces of dust carry a charge with it. And if it's zapped, it can turn on. It's like turning on a light switch. And so therefore that suppressed memory activates and it will start to play out in your current life. When I was teaching, I would joke to the folks taking my classes, because they would come in under the kind of overarching piece about Reiki, right? That would be like the big one. Even though I never called it Reiki, I would always call it energetics level 1 or energetics level 2. But, that piece of it was really just a top level entry into a very complex world of energy work. And it's very misunderstood just how layered energy work actually is. There is so many complex things that can happen. It's like peeling back a layer of an onion, and you get through one layer and then there's another layer. And there's a lot of very complex energetic issues that can come up, including soul fragmentation. And the soul fragmentation piece is just one component that makes up and impacts the soul energy. And that component really can be one that has such an impact that what it does is it prevents you from fully embodying your experience in this lifetime, from fully having the soul come into the body whole and to be able to be in the present time and space. It's holding on to whatever has happened. The main driver of soul fragments is generally as a result of a traumatic event, because basically what it's doing is it's serving as a protection mechanism for you. If you think of yourself, if you can imagine yourself made up of a ton of different puzzle pieces. And you have all these different puzzle pieces that will then create a full version of you. Think of it almost like if you look at a Lego, Legos have those, or you can see those 3D puzzles that you can buy too. Think of yourself that way. You're made up of all these different puzzle pieces that create that full third dimensional version of you. But what happens with soul fragmentation is you have a piece of the puzzle that goes missing. And we all have puzzles in our house, and we always lose a piece of the puzzle someplace. It falls on the floor, it gets swept up in the sweeper, we lose it, right? And that's what I think of when I think of a fragmented component of the soul missing. The fragmentation can be very, very small, or it can be very big. It can actually be the entire soul, which in essence causes a lack of connectivity. It causes a lack of embodiment within the human experience. So the biggest reason, the biggest driver, as I said, there's a traumatic situation that happens, and events are generally the driver of this happening. If you're finding it from this particular lifetime, in this particular embodiment, not from a past lifetime, but in this particular embodiment, things like a car wreck, an attack, usually something that you're not anticipating, something that comes in very quickly, and the soul will actually leave the body in order to protect itself. So this is a disassociation that happens. And you do that to protect yourself and also to not feel pain. So a lot of times we'll leave in order to numb ourselves so we do not feel the pain. We disassociate. And that's the biggest driver, is generally traumatic events. So that's the big one. Some of the signs that you'll feel or you'll notice as a result of that is that there seems to be a constant numbness. You're just not able to feel things. Depression is a big one too, even though that can have its own separate component from a condition that impacts the soul. So you may not have had a traumatic event, but depression can be a separate one that can affect the soul. And then a lot of anxiety will come in. There can be situations where you just have extreme fatigue. You never can feel rested. You're always feeling tired. Those are situations where this can show up. Another one is through chronic illnesses. And this can be a very broad component, obviously. But especially when children, you will see that there will be chronic illnesses that cannot be diagnosed or treated. It just seems to be lingering constantly. And so that can be a sign of a soul fragmentation. Some eating disorders are tied to this. Some addictions are tied to it as well. Not always. Those are less prominent, but there can be those that will pop up. And then emotionally, what you're going to see is a lot of chronic anxiety. Memory gaps are a big one, especially in childhood. If you can't remember a lot of your childhood, that is a form of protection, that you just can't remember things. Deep shame, deep judgment, especially of yourself, is another clue. And just feeling empty, feeling unloved, feeling, just not having much motivation and not having much there. Also, the thing of codependency can be another sign of this. So as I talked about these things like shock, something that happens really quickly is a big one. And again, long-term trauma can be another sign of this. There can be, a lot of trauma, a lot of neglect, especially during childhood development, that can cause this. Racism is a sign of it. That can happen. Things like when you're developing and you are going through puberty, that can be a very traumatic timeline in your life. And so teasing and taunting and things like that can actually cause us to fragment as well. There also can be things that can happen pre-birth. So a lot of things when you're in utero can happen. If there's trauma happening while you're in utero with your mother, there's abuse, there's other things, traumatic events that happen, it can cause us to not feel safe to fully come into body. And so therefore, even when we're born, we aren't fully embodying our full soul. We're separated. And then the other one is soul walk-ins. And I talked about this on a previous podcast. And this is something that I've seen, but also personally experienced this one, where our soul has agreed to swap places with another soul and take on the karmic debt and the load of that soul to fulfill that lifetime. And this can be very traumatic. And as a result, we can actually fragment. We can have fragmentation happen as we are taking on that karmic debt and that karmic load. The biggest pieces of fragmentation is that we feel very unsafe. There is an inability to really trust yourself as well because you're not fully embodied. And most of the work that is done around trying to address the fragmented component, most of this will take place in childhood. Not in all cases, you will have those past life aspects, but there's generally a repeated storyline that we all play out. We usually always pick a repeated component of things we want to work on because Earth is our school. This is where we come in to actually work really hard on the things that we've had happen in the past life that we want to grow from, that we want to evolve from, that we want to resolve. And so a lot of this can take place during childhood, and that's why the inner child work is really important. When we're children, we have no ability to leave a situation at all. We're really at the mercy of the caregiver, because we're always going to choose our care over our safety. And so in many cases, if we have a volatile home environment or a volatile parent, we are going to stay loyal to that parent, even if it means that we are being abused or we're being hurt. And so in those cases, we can fragment to protect ourselves. Other ways we can fragment are through the experience of the death of a loved one, if we've had to move unexpectedly, if we are in war zones. It's very common in war zones because of the trauma around, and also if people are displaced because of that, that can cause a fragmentation to happen as well. So, as you can see, in today's society, there are very few people who will not be impacted by a soul fragmentation. Pretty much everyone has at least a small puzzle piece that is floating around that it's important to be identified and try and be brought back into the soul. The most important thing that any of us can do to help bring in a soul piece is to make sure we feel safe. And this takes a lot of work because in most cases, our nervous systems are the things that are unregulated. And in order to feel safe, we have to make sure that the nervous system is regulated. And in other cases, what I have seen is that the auric field is actually very weak. It generally is polluted. We have lots of tears, we have lots of holes that are created in the auric field. And that can create bigger issues in feeling safe because essentially when we have a tear or we have a hole in the auric field, we're giving access to other people. And so what's happening there is our energy field is open for others to tap into and to extract energy from us by either courting in or attaching in. And so in those situations, it's going to impact our nervous system because we're constantly in a state of being attacked or being used or having our energy stolen from us. So the biggest flex to address a fragmented component is nervous system regulation and auric strengthening, and practices like breath work, practices like Kundalini yoga, energy work, and most importantly, I think therapy is a very big component of it, because many times we're having to dig deep into the unconscious to unearth what has occurred and to be able to bring it up to be addressed. And so we need, excuse me, we need all the support that we can have around us as we go through this process. Now, traditionally, soul retrievals are usually done through shamans, because shamans are trained to basically journey and travel with you or on behalf of you to go find the soul fragment and to bring it back to you. This can be really great, and it can fix a situation, but in some cases it can only temporarily fix a situation, because there's usually a deeper reason for the fragmentation occurring, and you can fragment again if you haven't addressed the bigger items, which again is feeling safe. It's feeling protected. It's feeling like you can actually be okay to do this work. You can't do soul retrieval work if you're still in a deep healing mode. So if you're still in a situation where something just happened, you haven't given yourself time to process it or to work through the emotional side of it, and you're still in shock and you're still in trauma mode, you cannot do a soul retrieval. It's not going to work at all. So if you think you have a soul fragmented piece that needs to be addressed, the first step in doing this is to first identify what you think it is. What is the root cause of it? Is it something that happened in this lifetime? Was it a traumatic event that happened that caused that situation? Or is it something that's coming in from a past life? You know, if it happens in this lifetime, you're more than likely going to remember it and you're going to know what the root cause of it is. But if it happens in a past lifetime and then it's activated again in this lifetime, so it's layered, right? You may have an instance where it triggered it in this lifetime, but you could have layers of lifetimes where you're playing out the same situation, right? So the storyline can be played out over and over and over again. And that goes a lot deeper because it's very unconscious, right? You think, oh, I had this incident happen in this lifetime. It must be that, but it's still lingering around. It's harder to bring back in the component, the soul component. So if you are thinking that that is a potential for you, it's going to be important to understand where it started. Where did all of this start? An Akashic Records reading may be important to figure out what was the starting point, what was the catalyst for this actually beginning. One thing I will say though, as you do this type of work, because this is deep work, this is obviously it's mostly triggered from trauma, is to make sure you have a good support team around you to assist you. Because a lot of times what happens is we get information, like we go into the Akashic and we get information. And what that does is that actually triggers more pain, more psychological stress. And so it's really important that you have a good therapist, even a regression therapist, to help you navigate through this, because you are unearthing things that seem to have a very strong pattern that is repeating, that goes way, way back, right? It's a deeper energetic piece that's sitting there, and we've got to address it at the thought level, the mind level first in most cases, because once we address it there, then we can start to feel more safe within our bodies to actually do the retrieval. So that is one thing that I would highly recommend if you ever go down this path, is making sure that you have a good trained support person to assist you with doing that. There are times, though, where the trauma is not so deep, it doesn't go back. And there are times where you can come back in and actually retrieve it yourself. And it is simply doing the work within the inner child components, making sure that your inner child is comfortable, that it is safe, that you play the adult in that situation where you are talking to your inner child, that you are giving the inner child the space, the time, and the support it needs to be able to fully feel safe to come back into you, come back in as the whole component. And so there are times where it's much easier to go through that, even with an energetics practitioner, to go through and do that work and bring that in. But if you have one that's filled with a lot of trauma and goes back many lifetimes, I would also recommend the psychological support to assist you. So again, this is just one component of many layers of energetics that can come up. But as we are seeing things playing out on a global stage right now, with a lot of really big traumatic things happening, it's important to understand the impacts that some of these things will have on our soul level, and the fact that we can actually be in a state of disconnection, of an ability to feel whole, feel worthy, feel loved, and have these blocks, these energetic blocks within our system that are not allowing us to fully move forward in this lifetime. And it also gives us just a little bit of awareness and consciousness as a whole, as a collective, as we start to continue to move down into this new energy that I was talking about, into the Aquarian age, where we're really focused on the whole, is having more empathy and compassion for each other, because we're all going through stuff. We all have our stories. We all have our backgrounds. Many of us here are incarnated right now to do this cleanup. And so we're holding a lot of past life components in our energy fields that are needing to be addressed. And the need also, as we move into this Aquarian age, is we are moving into more of this type of work. This energy work, this healing work is going to become more and more in demand as we start to collectively, more people start to awaken and remember why they're here. And they are going to have these things come up where they're going to need assistance in addressing it. So bottom line is, make sure to be kind to yourself. Working on your own feelings of feeling safe, of having that nervous system regulation is so very important as you navigate through your life. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please rate, review, leave a message, or share with others who may find it helpful. You can engage with me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Stina Life. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.